This session, we're going to look at a couple of ways to do snare drum sounds. There's two ways. There's a way of doing it where you're breathing out, which is good when you're first starting off, because that's how I learned the way of breathing out. But then there's a way of making a sound by breathing in. The sound breathing in is the sound that we need to do, is the sound that we need to get to actually, because that's the only way that you can breathe when you're doing complicated beats. So the way you can breathe is by doing the inward snare sound rather than the outward snare sound. There are some other sounds that you can use where you can breathe, but the snare one is the easiest and the bestest way I've found. So let's look at the way of breathing out. Two ways of breathing out. You've got the common one that you've probably seen before, and there was an advert a few years ago where the Boots and Cats adverts. So you make it a sound like it's like a K. And the way that he taught it in the advert that you probably was in was boots and cats, boots and cats, cats, cats. So you're making like a K sound, and that sound does come in useful because it sounds like when you have a snare drum and you put the stick onto the drum and you tap it on the sound, that is the sound that it makes. So that does come in handy later on as well when you're developing other beatbox sounds and creating a rhythm of different sounds and want to get more intricate with the sounds that you're making. So that's the first one. That's the first snare, the breathing out. So give that a go. If that's a bit difficult for you, try the way with the cats, you know, cats, cats, cats. Yeah? The first way that I learned was with the PFT sound. So imagine the letters PFT stuck together, yeah? And that's the word that you're trying to say. It looks difficult, doesn't it? It looks like you can't even read it. So PFT together. So what you're doing is you're pushing the words out, you're forcing it out. So you're emphasizing on the P and then the F and then the T. So, and then really force it out now. You can probably see by my lips, I'm really forcing it. I'm holding it in and then pushing it out. You can imagine it as PFF. Try that, PFF. Imagine it as PFF together. That's the sound that you want to be creating for a snare sound. Give it a go. Try PFF together. Don't worry if you don't get it straight away, because this sound, it took me a while. It took me a few weeks from what I remember. I was 14 when I first learned it. It took me a few weeks to learn it. It wasn't something that you can do straight away. This sound is a difficult sound because if you're not used to it, like, I mean, if you speak several languages, you can pick it up really quick because different languages use these kind of like mannerisms in the language. But for me, because I only spoke English, so it took me a while to learn this kind of sound. So don't worry if you're not getting it straight away. Just keep practicing. It'll take a few weeks. It took me 2 to 3 weeks, I think. You might get it in a few days. You might do it quicker than me. Other people learn it different ways. So just give it time. Just keep practicing it all the time in your spare time. PFF together, yeah? PFF together. And so what you can do now is, once you get this down, try and put it together with what you've learned in the previous one, with the bass drum and the hi-hat. So we'll go bass drum, hi-hat, snare. Then you can add the hi-hat on the end. So as you can see, there's a distinctive difference between the bass drum and the snare. You want to make sure that those two are two different. You don't want to, because I've heard sometimes when people will do the bass drum sounds the same as the snare. You don't want that. You don't want it to go, yeah, you want it to be a distinctive difference. At first, you can develop that later on where the similarities come in, but at first you want to be able to have a distinctive difference between the bass drum and the snare. so that you can create that rhythm and have a rhythm that you can follow. So, and then you can experiment with that. So it's yeah? Or if you can't do that straight away, try with the sound. Yeah, the boots and cats. And that's the same, boots and cats is the exact same as a bass drum, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat. So boots and try it slower. In the next lesson, we'll learn about the inward snare because that's a difficult one and it takes time. But keep practicing this meanwhile and then we'll get on to the next one.